Welcome to Tattooed Freaks in Business Suits, recorded live in the office of the Personal Touch Career Services in Denver, Colorado. I am your host, Donna Shannon, and as a professional career coach, I help people navigate the hiring maze to get to the jobs they really love. So in addition to working with job seekers one-on-one, I do have a book available. You can find Get a Job Without Going Crazy on Amazon or, my website too. So I do have a special guest today. Carolyn Stein is going to be joining me as we talk about the woeful situations that often come up with layoffs and how do we bounce back from that. So I'll let Carolyn introduce herself in just a minute. So our show's purpose is to explore and redefine the world of work, especially as Gen X, millennials, and those to come after us seek positions of leadership that still allow them to be themselves. So every show we explore a topic related to business or job searching. And of course, we're going to talk about tattoos. Our sponsor is the Personal Touch Career Services, Denver's top-rated career coaches. We focus on the practical tools for your job search, including resumes, LinkedIn profiles, job search coaching, and ongoing classes. So check out our ridiculously long website, personaltouchcareerservices.com. Once again, that's personaltouchcareerservices.com, or you can just Google it. So hi, Carolyn, how are you today?
I'm good. Hello, Donna. Thanks for having me on as a guest.
Yeah, my pleasure. So I didn't do you justice in your quick introduction, but you're an executive coach. So just tell us a bit more about yourself and your practice.
Sure. So I am a certified executive coach, but I started as a life coach way back in 2005, and then became a career consultant as well as an executive coach. I've got 30 years of behavioral science behind me. First, as a marketing executive, spent about a dozen years in that field. Then I became a high school art teacher and school leader. Spent another 10 years doing that. And then on to corporate learning and development and executive coaching. And about 2 or 3 years ago, took my side business full time.
Great. And we were talking some last week, and one of the things that you were bringing out is that you do help a lot with people dealing with kind of like the aftermath of the layoff or a termination, where in my case as a career coach, I like to tell people that I don't want to talk about your feelings. I just want to tell you what to do. So I'm very tactical and strategic in my approaches when it comes to job searching, but you probably help them out more on the feeling side than I do.
Yeah, I really specialize in helping people that are having a hard time navigating change. So sometimes that's due to a layoff. Sometimes it's due to leaving when they wish that they couldn't, because perhaps their profession or their industry has significantly changed and they no longer recognize it and no longer recognize themselves. So a lot of them are at a personal and professional crossroads. So the layoff is coming at a time when maybe they've had a big birthday, and so they're rethinking life, or they're 5 years from retirement. But the layoff might impact them in a much greater way than simply now it's time to find a new job.
That makes sense. So let's kind of talk about those first steps too. So what are some of the first things that you suggest somebody does once they have been laid off?
Oh, such a good question. So I'll answer that not from the HR professional standpoint of, negotiating a good exit package if you're in a position to do that, but to really slow down. So many people think that the next thing that they need to do the very next day is get the word out, get their resume redone, and hit the pavement. And I say, take a breath, take a week, 2 if you can, process what happened, zoom out, assess your situation. Truly, what's your financial situation? What's your social support network? What's your health? Do you have to get your doctor's appointments in before you leave your health insurance? Look at that bigger picture and really assess, what do you want to do next? Do you want to just look for the next job? Do you want to start a business? Do you want to make a career change? Do you want to take a little sabbatical and figure it out? And then look at, well, where are you now? What are the gaps you have to close to get to that next step? How much runway do you have to get there financially? And then make a plan and put your plan in place to move forward.
Mm-hmm. So it's really a mix of like kind of all three aspects, right? Physical, mental, emotional. And physical can even be part of, the aspects of, like you were mentioning, budgeting things out, right? It may be pleasing to say you want to take a 6 months break, but if you don't have severance that lasts that long, it might be not as advisable.
Exactly. And, really, if you're in outstanding health versus if maybe you have some health issues, now you've got to look at, well, do you need health insurance from a new job right away? Or do you maybe need a little time to get your health back on track? And you've got a little financial buffer to take some time to focus on your health? Or is there a middle ground in there somewhere?
Right. So how about that mental state?
Yeah, so good. So often, especially with really accomplished professionals, we tend to over-identify with our career and our job. And so the initial reaction when somebody loses their job or walks away from a job is, what am I going to do now for money? They might then think about, oh, this job title was important to me. What do I say when people say, oh, what do you do for a living in the United States is what's implied. And so understanding that you've just experienced loss, significant loss. You may have lost structure in your day. You may have lost a significant opportunity to make impact and create meaning. You may have lost social connection, especially for people who are single and living alone. And we know that that's continuing, into midlife and beyond. The loss of a job might be the primary social outlet and means of social interaction that somebody's had. So really looking at what are all these areas that you've lost, grieve them, and understand that you're now going to have to experience this time of transition and build those components back into your life. You don't need to wait for a new job to have meaning, to live and define your values, to connect well with people, and create a great opportunity with the time you do have to focus on building your capacity in terms of skills, in terms of health, in terms of good time to practice boundaries. I know a lot of clients are really struggling when they've faced long-term unemployment with the question, how's the job search going? Mm-hmm. Understanding who you want to connect with, how you want to connect with them, how often you want to connect with them, and the message you want to share when you connect.
Right, exactly. So I do want to touch on one thing, because there is sometimes a different mentality than when you are actually terminated versus like a layoff or a reduction in force, especially if it was for cause or it just kind of really came out of the blue, right? Sure. Because sometimes that will happen too, just for whatever reason. Hopefully, okay, I'll put my HR hat on. Yeah, depending on the size of the organization, they can't necessarily just fire you for the first infraction. A lot of times they try to put into play a performance plan for improvement, but that doesn't always happen, right? And sometimes people get that mentality of, oh, the boss was out to get me. And what do you think the immediate reactions would need to be that are different from the layoff situation when handling a termination.
So true. So I don't want to overstep into HR law. I'm not an employment attorney, but I think it's really important to very carefully and honestly assess your mental state, your emotional state. How are you feeling?
Mm-hmm.
Are you really blindsided? Do you have a lot of anger to process? Do you have a lot of frustration to process? Your next step is to not go on social media and tell everyone about it. Your next step is not to call everyone you know. Your next step is possibly, if you are not able to disentangle from the story, see a therapist. Understand that what we were talking about earlier, these feelings of grief and loss of identity, are still going to likely show up, but you might also be experiencing feelings of betrayal. And that might be something that you want to work through with a therapist. When you're looking at what just happened to me, that's often a great time to be working with a therapist versus working with a coach like myself or like you of how do I move forward from here.
Right, because as a coach with my point of view, where people engage with me in that situation is like, I know I had this really bad layoff or this termination. How do I talk about this in an interview? And sometimes part of that process, it's like not just coming up with the perfect words in the interview itself. It's like, okay, we got to reconcile some of these feelings because you keep calling your former boss the devil, and anybody would have quit if they were in the situation I was. Just go Google this person. You'll see how awful they are. You can't say that in an interview. I don't care if they were the devil incarnate. It never reflects back well on the job seeker to say something like that.
Absolutely. And this is where sometimes putting the job and the career in a smaller bucket for a while can be really helpful. So again, if you are still in the middle of processing what happened, that might be therapy. I often see clients who have worked or currently are working with a therapist. And so if they've worked through that or are working through that, I would say let's zoom out and look at your life in a broader perspective. Mm-hmm. So what are the times that you're making contributions now, where you're making meaning now? How can you continue to do that? What are you learning? It's a great time because the job search is somewhat out of our control. There's only so much we can do. We don't know how long exactly it will take. So this transition period is a great time to learn something new, feel progress, mastery, control, have something else to talk about and think about rather than this horrible boss that you had. Get your health is critical. So focus on yourself, focus on how you're making a difference now. Get your career in a smaller, I'm tripping over myself. I'm gonna digress for a second and talk about balance from an art perspective. And I use a lot of analogies with my clients. Sometimes it's like a athletic injury, right? So if you're still really wrapped up in the story of your old boss and you can't even say the right words without anger coming through those words, right, then maybe you're still in the acute injury phase, right? And so you're not quite weight bearing yet, let alone strength building, let alone back into, active play. And so maybe you still need a little bit of healing time. And part of that healing time is putting things into more balance. And if you think about the scales of justice, where you've maybe got 10 rocks that are small on one side and one big rock on the other side, that's usually how we've created a life, with the career and the job is that big, giant 10-pound rock. So why don't you make that a smaller rock for now and bring some of the other components of life into balance and minimize that over-identification with your previous job and over-identification with your career path?
And that makes a lot of sense, of course. So, what are some of the tools that you would like specifically work with somebody, especially like an issue of loss of structure? So in my case, being a very tactical and strategic job searching coach, structure is one of the things that we put in play a lot, because it's kind of like that whole trap of, how do you know if your job search is successful? Well, you get a job, but there's like different metrics that we've identified along the way to gauge the success. We even break it down into what are you supposed to be doing on a monthly, weekly, daily basis. These are the metrics that you want to hit, like how many reach outs you do to somebody versus filling out applications. That's our approach. That's what we do.
Sure.
So structure for you, what does that mean?
Yeah, so structure, for me, is more of a time and energy throughout your day and day to day, because that's often what's lost when somebody loses their job. Mm-hmm. So now it's the kind of blank canvas of, what am I supposed to do with my day? And oftentimes habits were developed that, because their commute is now out the window, or whatever their modified version of a commute might be, if they're now working from home, they're also not taking time to listen to music, for example. So how do you get structure back in your day? That's one of the first things that people really struggle with. And it's really the foundation, I find, for a lot of people to find their footing again. So one of the really easiest things that anybody listening can do right now is incorporate 5 daily habits into their life. These are taken from Sean Anker, who wrote Happier at Work, and he has a wonderful TEDx talk that you can Google. And these habits are journaling, writing down 3 things every morning you're grateful for. So that trains your mind to wake up and look for the positive. Mm-hmm. The other is move your body, right? So it doesn't have to be go do a tremendous workout, but move your body. Another habit is a random yet intentional act of kindness. So this kind of ties to that idea of making an impact or a contribution. It also makes sure that you're connecting with people. So small things that you can notice, reaching out to a friend to say that you're thinking of them, holding the door open for somebody at the store when you're on an errand. Another one is meditation. Now, meditation is not the answer for everybody. I, as a former high school teacher, know that there are certain people that are just not going to connect with traditional meditation, but there are still meditative outlets available. Anything that's repetitive, that just helps you calm and regulate, that's really what we're talking about. So in Sean Anker's version, the answer is meditation, but the intention behind that is being present, finding ways to self-regulate. The last habit is, at the end of the day, writing down something that was a positive experience from the previous 24 hours. Why is it important to write in the morning and at night? It helps us hardwire it into longer-term memory. Sean Anker also goes on to explain that by writing down something that was a positive experience of the previous 24 hours, we get to relive it. What I tell my clients is, this also makes you aware, if you don't have much to write about for 2-3 days in a row, that's a good indication you need to be more intentional about how you are planning your day. You're probably not planning your day.
Mm-hmm.
Those are 5 great habits to start with. From there, you can see which are working for you, which other habits you might want to add. You can start time blocking. So all of those wonderful things, Donna, that you are having your clients to do in the middle of the job search, people can use time blocking to say, okay, I am going to every day for X amount of hours during this time, do these things that Donna asked me to do.
Yeah. And another thing, we do a very abbreviated test about work styles. And this kind of relates to this. So if anybody out there is listening and they don't exactly know what time blocking is, so that's one of your concepts for time management, where on your calendar, you set, okay, from like 1 to 3 o'clock, I'm working on this task and nothing else is going to happen. So it prioritizes it. You know when it's going to happen, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it's important to note too that, we're so conditioned to think that we can multitask. And a big part of maintaining focus throughout a transitionary time is maintaining energy.
Mm-hmm.
And so task switching is a real thing. We don't multitask. We switch between tasks, and there's a real energy and focus cost to doing that. So just to go deeper into what you were talking about, Donna, it's not about saying, I'll do 20 minutes here and 20 minutes there and fit it in. It can take us 20 minutes for our mind to fully shift into a focus mode. So answering that one email about something completely different than your job search during that 2 hours that is blocked for your job search is going to cost you 20 minutes on either side of answering it and then coming back.
And it's not just that too, because here's the other insidious part, right? If it's something you don't want to do, or if it's something that you're not exactly sure how to do, we're more likely to avoid it, right? We're more likely to pay attention to, oh, look, I got a Facebook message on my phone. Oh, look, an email popped in from my, the Colorado Avalanche are doing something cool. I better check that out. And it's really just running away. But it's that we don't want to admit that we don't know what we don't know.
Right.
And that's where people run into the trap that I see all the time, where they, you've heard of the HR black hole, right?
I haven't.
Oh, so the HR black hole.
In the job. Yes, I have. I'm sorry.
Right. So it's where, you submit a resume and resumes go into HR, never to be seen of again, because it falls into the black hole where neither light nor resumes can escape. Well, there's another black hole, and that's the black hole of the job boards, where I see job seekers time and again go and spend hours every day poring over the job sites, whether it's Indeed, LinkedIn, whatever, and because they don't know what else to do. Yes. And it feels like you're being productive when you're tweaking a resume for 2 days in a row, or you find 10 jobs to just blast a resume off to, even if it's something you're not qualified for, because it feels like you're accomplishing something, anything with the job search. Would you agree with that one?
Absolutely. And this is where understanding how we manage our energy and how we manage our time are so overlapping, right? Because what a time suck that is, but also what an energy suck that is, or maybe energy neutral, right? But we want to do stuff that makes us feel excited and happy and proud. And so one of the things I think I talked about earlier about, learning something new, well, now you feel maybe you're not making progress and doing something in your job search, but you are making progress in mastering something new. You may be connecting with people that you would otherwise not connect with that might have a lead on the job. And we know that not all jobs come from job boards, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, it gets you out there, and having that hobby that you're looking forward to is also going to prevent you, hopefully, from spending all day, day after day in front of your computer looking at job boards. You have this focus on instead.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that I do love about Meetup. It's great to find places that you can actually go and meet with other humans face to face and things like this. So I've run a job searching group on there since 2009. And the one thing that's been kind of sad about the pandemic is we used to meet in person. And then after we hit like 2021, I'm starting to go, okay, well, let's try some hybrid meetings. Nobody showed up in person. Everybody still was doing it online. And I know they're not even though I give them time to do introductions, people are not connecting the same way. It's like they come, they watch the presentation, they're out, and they may or may not connect with people afterwards. So I think you were talking about losing your social connections through your job. And sometimes people are so focused on these job searching programs, they just show for the content and not the people. But you do something else like Meetup, where it's like, oh, I'm going to go take an improv class, or I'm going to join a quilting circle. It fulfills that other aspect of people, but more importantly, makes some genuine connections.
Absolutely. It's so important to maintain those connections. And Donna, you're the job search expert. I really help people who aren't sure what they want to do next to decide and do what's next. And if that's getting a job, then I happily say, great, now you need a resume, you need a job search strategy. Let's get you connected with Donna. So you might know the statistic better than me, but I believe that there is some statistic out there that says most of jobs are found through our loose ties, not our close ties. So that means, your third degree or more on LinkedIn, the friend of a friend of a friend of a friend. So you got to get out there. You got to meet people, not only for your own sense of self and balance and everything we talked about, but it'll also likely help you find that next job.
Okay, so you just said something we've only touched briefly on so far, but I want to dive a little bit different because this is unique for your practice that we don't offer. And that you were just saying you help them determine what that next career path is. So especially if you're in a layoff and you got some severance, now you can do some real deep dive reflecting. What are some tools or strategies you use to help people answer that infinite question, what do I want to be when I grow up?
Well, such a good question. And, one thing is I would say, can we add next to the end of the question? Sure. What do I want to be next when I grow up? Because we might have multiple careers in the course of our life. And so adding that next really, I find with many of my clients, helps relieve some of the overbearing weight of that question, right? What's next? Knowing that it might not be the end, but at least you'll have decided in a really intentional way, what is that next step for you? And so we look at what are your values? And do these values still serve you, or do you need to adopt some new ones? Are there values that you have that conflict with each other? A really common thing that I see people do is mistake their priorities for values. So in this context, values they can be observed in your behavior. So a really common assumption is family is a value. Oh, family, I value my family more than anything. And for the purpose of this exercise, we would say, well, so we can say you prioritize your family over everything else, but your values will inform how that plays out. So for example, somebody whose value is around security might show their family love and show their family they're a priority by providing for them financially, which might mean less time with their family. Mm-hmm. Somebody else might really value adventure, in which case they might be taking their kids out of school if they're young enough and taking big family adventures, right? So we look at that. A lot of times, like I said, my clients are in midlife and later. And for those that are close to retirement, they've got a lot of financial security. Mm-hmm. That's still their highest value. And it's really holding them back from having a little more freedom in their life. So we might look at things like, can you replace financial security with safety? Mm-hmm. And I'm going back with financial security because it's so big for everybody.
Oh, right? Yeah.
And freedom are two values, core values that I often find people have. Okay, well, how could those maybe be conflicting? Because financial security might be giving you golden handcuffs, and that's limiting your freedom. So what do you really mean by freedom? Right? So number one, let's get really clear on your values. Number two, let's get really clear on what you find meaningful in terms of contribution. This is another thing that people really struggle with. When I ask them, what are some times that you've made contribution personally or professionally that you're really proud of in your life? Not a personal accomplishment where you did something for yourself, you achieved something, but something where you made a difference for someone else, because that's what we get paid to do, for the contribution we make to others. So when we look at that and we find a common thread, a specific common thread throughout all of it, that can point us to, okay, this isn't about the problem you want to solve, it's about the difference you want to make. Mm-hmm. It's a subtle distinction, but it explains a lot of the choices that maybe they made. They were focusing on problems to solve versus differences to make. And when they find that specific common thread, and we get really, really specific with it, that restores their sense of confidence. They see that something they've probably done both in their personal life and their professional life. They can start doing it tomorrow without having a job attached to it. And so it really lets them rewrite their past story and their future story. So values, meaning and contribution. Then we look at, based on those things, what's the vision you want for your future? And I'll tell you what, Donna, before the pandemic, we would talk 10, 15 years in the future. A year ago, people were looking at 90 days, 6 months.
Right.
Now people, when we're talking about future, maybe looking at 1 to 3 years. But so future means whatever forward vision you have capacity right now to look ahead.
Yeah.
And look at, does this vision you're describing align with what you said your values are? Does it align with the contribution you want to make? Is there time in your personal life to make it if that's not something you want to do professionally? So get really clear on all of these other things. Now that you're clear on that, how much does this lifestyle cost? Now you're getting some parameters around the decision-making criteria when you then go explore other career options. Once you've got that life vision, you look at your workday vision. So are you leading a team? Are you on a team? Are you an individual contributor? What's the ideal version of all of this? And again, keeping in mind that financial aspect. Mm-hmm. Then you've got what we call like your life alignment decision-making matrix. And this isn't necessarily easy. So for these clients too, we start with structure, right? We start with looking at like this, how are you going to manage your time and energy from this? How are you going to, when it looks like you are ready to replace one value with another, what does that mean for some of your friendships, perhaps? How are you going to develop better boundaries? Oftentimes people think they want to make a career change, but really what happened is they probably were promoted into leadership roles and never got leadership training. And so we develop leadership skills for them. So
that is a big problem. It is. That it comes back to that old saying of you will be promoted to your level of incompetence and then you will be fired.
Exactly. So, sometimes from this decision-making matrix, it goes into, okay, I just want a different job. I can see now why this company, or, not for the first time, I've had clients who've had the same job in the same company for 10 years or longer. And during the pandemic, everything changed. And the behavior of their boss changed and their workload changed. And they kept waiting for it to go back to normal. And then realized, no, it's never going back to normal. Maybe my boss isn't who I thought my boss was, or maybe my boss has changed, or whatever has changed. I can't quite put my finger on it, but this place isn't the place I thought it was anymore. And when we go through this exercise, they're really able to see, oh, and here's exactly what's different. And I can adapt to that. And here's how I'll adapt to it. And that's a deal breaker for me because that violates my core values. And so I don't need a career change, but I need to change jobs. Yeah. So they might look for a different job. They might find a new career. They might decide to start a business, or they might realize, probably, I used to be before the pandemic, probably 70% of my clients, now probably 30% of my clients realize, oh, you know what? No, I need to just develop some far better leadership and self-leadership skills. I need to learn how to delegate more effectively. I need to learn how to communicate more clearly. I need to adapt to understanding that some of the people that are on my team have never worked at an in-person job ever. They had maybe no work experience in college, and now all of their work experience has been remote, and we're back to the office. And so this is a brand new dynamic for everybody. So and that might be true no matter what job. So how do I manage that? So it really just kind of depends on the person, what comes out of this exercise. But it's the exercise, they become a more self-aware, intentional person who's able to act on their awareness rather than just be aware and spin on their awareness.
Yeah, great. Okay, so now we get to come to my favorite part of the show, where we get to talk about tattoos.
Yes.
Carolyn, you don't have a tattoo, do you?
I have a tattoo, Donna.
So if you were to get a tattoo, what would you get and why?
That is a really good question. And I think the tattoo I would get would be the Tree of Life. And I would get that tattoo because, number one, there are so many different representations of them, and they're all beautiful. It has meaning across so many cultures and spiritual and religious traditions. So I find it a very universal, uniting symbol. And there's a connection there to nature. And I really feel that nature is my spiritual, connected, happy place.
Well, there you go. I am not surprised you chose that at all, given everything we just learned about you.
Thank you.
So speaking of learning about you, Carolyn, tell us your website, where can people reach you? And throw us your contact information.
Yeah, so my website is CarolynSteinCoach.com. Carolyn is spelled with a Y-N. My LinkedIn is linkedin.com/in Stein Carolyn. Not that active on Facebook. So LinkedIn is probably the social where you want to connect with me. You can email me through my website, and I have visual representations of some of the things that we talked about on the website. And if you'd like any other visual representations of some of these frameworks and tools, you can connect with me on LinkedIn or through my website and ask for them.
Great. Well, thank you very much for joining us today, Carolyn. I really appreciate it. So for everybody out there, if you like what you heard, please give us a like, give us a follow, maybe even give us a comment. If you didn't like what you heard, just keep it to yourself. Don't be mean. All right. We will catch you next time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Tattooed Freaks in Business Suits, produced by the Personal Touch Career Services. Our host is Donna Shannon. All music has been ethically sourced and licensed from sounddogs.com and epidemicsound.com. Support the arts. We certainly do. Join us next time as we continue to explore the evolving world of work and leadership in the United States. If you are interested in being a guest, or if you would like to receive a complimentary career evaluation, please visit the contact page at personaltouchcareerservices.com. Once again, that's personaltouchcareerservices.com. Or you can just Google it.